Hi there. Welcome to Indie Vent. We are nearing the end of the broadcast day, but it's just going to get better as the night goes along, I promise you. And Meredith Loughran was supposed to be here, but she's shepherding another panel right now, and she will be entering the area very soon, I am sure. But anyway, I'm Brian K. Morris, author and publisher and troublemaker. And I've got three incredible writers here that are going to discuss the concept of Pantster or planner or Plantser, whatever. We're going to figure out what that is, and maybe you'll find out what you are during the course of this event. So anyway, I'd like to welcome the panel. Thank you for being here, all of you. I heard
You're welcome.
Cindy is squeaking. Anyway,
yeah,
I hate when I do that, but I understand. So let's see what we're going to do. And by the way, we are going to be welcoming your questions. So please type in a question, and we'll answer it as best we can. We're going to make this as interactive as we possibly can. So I'm going to go clockwise as you're looking at this, and we're going to start with Cindy Koepp. Please tell us who you are, what you have written, and where people can find your excellence.
All right. My name is Cindy Koepp. I write science fiction, fantasy, game lit, and teacher resources. I recently released 2 new books this past spring. I've released Into the Open, which was the sequel of Like Herding the Wind, and my first game lit novel, Animal Eye. You can catch up with me and all my stuff at my webpage, CKOEPP.com.
All right, very good. Thank you. Now let's get Bill in here. Bill?
Hello. Hi, Bill McCormick, Bill McSci-Fi. I'm a science fiction writer, obviously. I also write nonfiction that gets used on a Fox radio show, making me the token liberal over there. That's fun. But anyway, yeah, so I write science fiction. I got 3 novels out called The Brittle Riders, which recently got re-released as an omnibus. So if you need a 1,200-page book to bludgeon somebody to death with, I've got it. And my new book, Splice, just came out. It's based on a motion picture that I wrote, which also sold. So I'm having a pretty good year, actually, in 2020. So that's out. And I've got a novel coming out in 2 months called Gopri of the Mist, which is the prequel sequel to The Brittle Riders, but written in an entirely different style just to mess with people's heads. So that's me. And you can find me at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, BillMcSci-Fi.com. There's stuff up there that you can spend money on or just read or just look at the pretty colors. There's really lots of pretty colors. So go ahead, have fun. BillMcSci-Fi.com. Have fun.
Most excellent. And now, Gary, tell the people how awesome you are.
Hi, I'm Gary Timbrell. I'm also a sci-fi writer, whichever you want to use. I'm the author of Lunar 3097, and it's a book of a 3-part chronicle series. The second one should be out by the end of this year. And you can find me on lunar3097.com or any of the, my book is for sale on any of the normal websites that you would normally buy a book.
All right, excellent. Thank you. And I'm Brian K. Morris. As I said earlier, I'm a publisher and writer. We do horror, humor, pulp, and all kinds of stuff. Strong female characters. You can find us at risingtide.pub. And since I'm not the star here, we've got 3 other people who are. Let's get them back onto the board here. And now, starting with Gary and going counterclockwise here, are you a pantser or a planner? State your intentions here, and how did you develop that method of writing?
Well, my method of writing is a pantser, I'm assuming, because the first book, there was nothing actually planned as chapter by chapter. The story started out in my head as a beginning and an ending, and I filled the middle as I went. I found with the second book that I had to be a bit more of a planner, because the second book has to tie into the first book in more than one way. In actual fact, about 5 or 6 different ways. So as I'm trying to write the second book, it proved to me that a little planning does help, because you end up rewriting chapters because of you having to fit it into the first one. So I like the fact the first book was easier to write because I was just doing it by the seat of my pants. and I knew what I wanted to get to, how far I wanted to go. But once I got there, and now I'm started on the second one, I realized that you do need a little planning if you're going to write more than one in a series.
All right. Very good. Very good. Bill, how about yourself?
Oh, I'm definitely a pantser. And unlike Gary, I didn't even plan it when I wrote the Brittle Riders. That's, like I said, 1,200 pages. I wrote it as one linear story. So that makes me an idiot. And because when you walk into a publisher and you go, I've got this story and it's 1,200 pages long and no one's ever heard of my name before. And the nice people at Azoth Chem actually managed not to laugh at me when they signed me. But they broke that thing out into 3 different books. And so it ends up really being 3 chapters because I put no chapter lines in it whatsoever. So it's just, you start on page 1, you got to go all the way to the end because you have no idea where to put that bookmark.
Wow.
Yeah, it is. I write very differently. People read my stuff and they're like, "What's wrong with you?" And now, contrary-wise, when I wrote Splice, I was pitching a comic book and that got shot down. But then I ended up selling a movie when I was trying to sell a comic book, and that's just how my year has been going. And then they kicked back on me, and I was like, yeah, well, we need an IP to support the movie, so let me do the comic book. And he went, nah, write a novel. And so I wrote a novel based on the script I'd written, but then realized that I had to write the novel differently. There had to be scenes in the novel that are not in the movie, and because stuff that works really well in a film, like that slow visual of the desk over there, you write. And Bob looked at the desk.
Yeah.
You've got one hell of a boring book is what you've got. So I had to come up with different things to happen in there. And that was really a challenge. That was a challenge because I wrote the script as a pantser, and then I had to go back and write the movie or write the novel. And I needed to use what elements from the script because otherwise what am I writing about? So I made sure the dialogue matched back and forth. Anything that it gets spoken in the movie, it gets spoken in the book, and vice versa. But after that, I just had some serious fun. I wrote the world's worst hip hop lyrics because I had an imaginary tape of an 8-track of hip hop. I don't even know if they make 8 tracks anymore, but my God, I had an 8-track. And so the actual opening of the book, and when I showed it to the owner of Watchdog Entertainment, when I showed it to him what I was planning on doing with the book, he sent me money and said, just keep writing. And the opening of the book actually goes like this: hippity hoppity till you droppity. My beats so fly, they don't drop, they fly like eagles over the top. And other just atrocious hip hop lines. And it's the kind of stuff you would get on an 8-track. So I'm really proud of myself. But yeah, I just make it up as I go along. And it ends up being whatever the hell it ends up being. And here I am.
Nice.
You
poor man. Yeah, you poor man. I'm trying to sell a comic book. Instead, I get a movie deal. Damn the bad luck. I tell you.
I told our pastor today. I'm like, I just met her for the first time. I got a new pastor, and I was like, I'm a dismal failure. I still haven't sold the damn comic book.
Loser.
Yeah. L7, baby, L7.
That's right. And now, Cindy, how about you? Pantser or planner?
I am an extreme planner. When I come up with some kind of brilliant idea, I sort of use a mutant snowflake method where I write sort of a really quick premise of it, and then I start expanding it out from there. So I got the basic premise and then a little more detail about what's going on, and I build the characters and all the background and maps and build the cultures for the weird civilizations and map of the ship and terrain and wow. And so by the time I'm done, I have like 30 or 40 pages worth of notes. And I haven't written one word of the novel yet.
Well, what was you were telling me? Like, I think it was about your latest book. It was something like 720 pages or something like that.
Yes, yeah, Animal Eye. When the publisher first formatted it, came out 705 pages. He ended up tweaking the spacing or something, and it worked down to 694.
Well, that's more like it, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the longest single story I've done. I've done a trilogy before that's not published that works out about the same. But yeah, it was huge monster of a story.
Wow, that's great. Well,
it makes my book sound like a pamphlet. 268 pages.
I think, I do about like 500, and I feel like an underachiever now. But now I'd like to welcome to everyone's great relief, Meredith Loughran, who is a writer and a budding comic book writer as well. We're glad you finally made it, Meredith. We know you were delayed, and after I tell everybody that I was originally a pantser, and then I kept writing myself into corners that I just couldn't bear to get rid of all the excess copy that I had slaved over and fallen in love with. So I became a planner, and then I started getting books out. Then I got bored with then I realized I wasn't following my outlines anyway, so I might as well become a plantser. So I've got to put in both camps here. But now here's Meredith to take over and bring some sanity finally to this show. Meredith? Meredith? Oh, you're muted. Hold on. Let me get you here. Hold on. Oh, you moved.
There I am.
There you go. I was going to say, and now the show will run a lot more smoothly, but anyway. Anyway, Meredith, take it away.
Thank you. Meredith Loughran, I am the coordinator of this indie event, and it is not, it's not owned by anybody, but I just want to kind of get up to date with what you guys were talking about, because I'm about 10 minutes late, and I see Donna in the green room, and I want to bring her up in here too so that she can introduce herself. So who wants to kind of get me up to date on where we are as far as pantster or planner? Did we just kind of state, plant our flag and say, I am a pantster?
Yes.
That's what we did.
Yes, and we've introduced ourselves and probably bought as much time for you as we can. So please bring in Donna.
Hi, Donna.
Hello there.
Hey. So, okay. So who here is a pantster?
That would be me.
Oh, at least we have one we have a planner then, Cindy.
Yeah,
thank goodness.
I'm both.
I become both with the second book, so.
I'm so glad to hear that you're working on the second book, because I read your first one, Gary, and I have sent you a couple messages saying, when is the second one coming out? So you've got at least one person.
Other people.
I was going to say, you have at least me on your ass about getting that done.
Yeah. It seems to be the main question everybody wants the answer to. Well, and the problem is, I might be an old guy, but I still go to work every day.
Yeah.
And do 40 or 50 hours work at a meatpacking company as a maintenance manager. So, and with what's going on right now in the world, it makes it difficult to even. I know I'm at home all the time, but for some reason that actually sitting here doesn't always mean that I can write. I need to write. I'm like a prima donna when it comes to the writing, I guess. I like to have everything just how I like it, and that means quiet. And I live in a house with a lot of people and some rescue dogs, which pretty much makes that impossible. So it's slow. It's been a very slow process. But I'm getting there. I'm hoping to have it done in the next 90 days.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a pretty hard deadline. Donna, I'm going to get over to you and let you introduce yourself. And, you already raised your hand for Pantster, but, let's talk about you for a moment, what you do, where we can find you and all that stuff. Introduce yourself, and then we'll zoom on from there. Brian, do you need to go?
No, I can if you don't want me around.
No. I'm not trying to get rid of you at all.
I'm used to it. I'm totally used to it, and I don't blame you either. But I'd love to stick around if you want me to.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I'm actually hoping that somebody. I've got a couple people on my list who have not quite made it into the room yet. So go ahead, Donna. Let me shut up and you introduce yourself, and all that good stuff.
Okay, my name is Donna Carlene. I've been writing since 5th or 6th grade. My first published works were poetry, but I came out with some crime drama that my publisher liked, and he did that. And then I made a foolish mistake of asking my fans what genre they wanted, or if they wanted me to continue with what I had, and they picked historical romance, which I have, and that's the one I'm going to be having out at SilCon, called The Seduction of Lily Monroe, and it's graphic. It is.
All right.
It is a graphic romance. Yes, it's a woman coming of age under the hands of a master. Totally.
Sounds like my kind of book.
Totally a pantser. I do have kind of a formula in one of my crime dramas where I'll be with the main characters, and then at the end of the chapter, the bad guy or protagonist, however you want to call them, comes, and you see it from them. They're not mysteries. You know who done it. It's just how the main characters get to who done it, and it's mainly character based. What else would you like to know?
Well, here's the funny thing. I think it was a Stephen King quote where, people ask him like, well, how do you hammer out so many books? And he goes, one word at a time, and so it leads me to wonder, is he a total pantster too, or does he actually plan? And I wanted to go to Cindy because you are the sole planner here. And I know that there are very many different types of outlines and ways that we can organize our stories to get it going. I have my opinions on it, but I want to hear your process, because I want to learn to be better, but I think I'm an impatient writer when it comes to stuff like that, because I get an idea in my head, and I think that's why I consider myself a pantster, but I really want to be a planner, but I'm really freaking lazy. So I'll give the floor to you.
Well, there are a lot of different strategies for doing it. One of the more popular ones is called the snowflake method, where you start with your elevator pitch, and then you expand that out to sort of like the back cover blurb, and then you expand that out into 3 acts, and then you break that down further, and you get to the point where you have like almost a sentence per paragraph, and then you start writing the book. I'm not quite that crazy. I found that didn't quite work for me, so I use a mutant snowflake. I still start with my basic premise and then expand that out to a longer paragraph, build the characters out, build them backgrounds, detail any cultures that are involved. So I usually deal with first contact situations or multiple culture situations. Usually going to way more detail than will ever show up in the book. But that provides me with background and motivations for why people do what they do. Every character has an arc, including the bad guy. The bad guy's arc goes backwards. He starts with success and he ends up failing in the end. All the protagonists and secondary characters, they mess up the first time, they succeed accidentally or succeed partially the second time, and then they ace at the end. And then taking all those character arcs, I plot them out in order, and that gives me the basic outline of the story, and then I plot the individual scenes. Sometimes even with dialogue bits if my brain has gotten that far. And by that point, it often does. That doesn't mean that I follow my outlines perfectly. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when I start writing that scene that sounded great in my brain, yeah, it doesn't work when I get to that part of the story. So I drop that one out, or I write it and I drop it out later. Sometimes I miss stuff. I'll get done writing the whole book, read back through it as I'm editing, and realize I missed a bit where it would have been handy if I'd set that up before. So I go back and I set up whatever the thing is that I needed to progress the story further. So yeah, even though I'm an extreme planner, I don't always plot it out perfectly. I do have some experience with Renaissance rapier combat. So in my fantasy stories, they're usually Renaissance era, so I can take advantage of that. And when I get to the duels and stuff, I actually have blow that part of the map up even further. So it's, in action and a reaction. One character does this and the other character responds that way. And so it's step by step.
Mhm.
And I shadow box it so I make sure it all fits.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask about that. David Adkins, I think, wrote. I'm sorry, it was Molly Daniels. What comes first, characters or plot? Can we just go around the room and what are your thoughts on that? As far as do you develop your characters first? Do you plot first? I mean, I think as a pantster, I kind of just go with whatever is in my mind, and then I let that take me as far as I can go. Let's start with Brian, and then we'll go down to Carl, Donna, and then we'll go across, and then back up to Cindy. Brian, what about you? Characters or plot? What do you do first?
Generally, I start with the plot, and like Cindy said, it starts out as a one-sentence description of what I want to cover, and then I usually try to apply what qualities would the hero or heroine need to have to solve the problem, and then what qualities or flaws in their makeup would prevent them from doing so easily. So then already you've got an internal conflict aside from your external conflict in the plot. And then from there, I start expanding out and building characters for everyone to interact with, and try to do kind of like an older variation of the 3-act play, except it's called Lester Dent's Master Plot, and it's been a very helpful framework for doing my stories. And then I just plot everything out until I'm either exhausted or the plot is. So,
Donna, how about you?
That all depends. In my Hunter's Ridge, it's usually what trouble can Carly get into next. She seemed to get involved, shall we say. Sometimes it's something that I see. I saw this wonderful thing on a forensic program that the person who was watching the show with me says, "You could never put that in a book because no one will believe it." And I'm like, "Oh, challenge accepted." And so,
That's the
yeah,
best part.
that's in my next Hunter's Ridge book that I'm writing right now.
Mhm.
And I think I know how Stephen King does it. If he does it like me, there's 4 stories right there, all going at the same time.
Oh Lord.
It's oh, wait a minute, I gotta add to this. I gotta add to that. What came first? I don't know. It went down. I am a true cut and paster, and not on the computer. My stuff's all written out by hand, and then the papers are torn into pieces and put it back the way they should be.
That's why I have sticky notes.
Right?
Well, what about you, Gary? I mean, character or plot? Because I know Lunar was a long time project for you before you finally got it published, and now to have such a short window for book 2.
The actual idea was a long time. The actual writing of the book took me a year.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether that's a long time or not, because it was my first book.
Mm-hmm.
But plot is definitely the first thing with that book, because I had an idea in my head for all those years about what I wanted to do, and it was a bucket list thing that it ended up being a challenge for my daughter to write the book, and the characters all ended up being the personas of my family members, which also are their names in the book. So they have nowhere to hide when they read my book.
Uh-oh.
And of course, none of them agree that any of them are like their little characters in the book, but they are. And so the characters were something that needed to be pliable, I guess, from the beginning to the end. And in order for that to happen, you have to have a place to go with your story, in my opinion, first. And so I had the beginning, and I knew where I wanted to end. And then those characters had to fit that, and the story had to fit it. So my book, the first book, has a little twist at the end and a surprise at the end that makes you want to read the second one, hopefully. And that was intentional. So I guess that part was a little bit of a plan. But getting from A to Z in that book was a trip for me, because as it came out, I went, oh yeah, that's great. I love that part. And then I'd go back and I'd have to change something a little bit in the chapters before in order to make that work better. And so it was definitely plot first for me.
Bill, how about you? Characters or plot?
Absolutely, characters.
You have a lot. You have a lot of different books, but you also do a multimedia type of things as far as music and videos and stuff like that too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I write for comic books. I write novels. I write short stories. I'm in, I don't know, 20, 30 anthologies now, whatever. There's a lot of places you can buy my stuff, but and it kind of depends. I mean, when I'm writing a novel, and I kind of need to limit myself here, because when I'm writing a comic book, I'm usually being brought in to fix something other people have started. I make good money doing that, so don't discount it. But they already have characters. They have a plot. They have an idea of what has to happen in their universe. So then I have to use that and build on it and work with that. But when I'm writing a novel, and I'm writing a Bill McCormick novel, a Bill McSci-Fi project, Bill McSci-Fi joint in honor of Spike Lee. Well, we need some color on the screen, so I'm just bringing it in the best I can here. But anyway, but when I write myself, I write characters first. When I wrote the Brittle Riders, I pictured Geldish, Brar, Sland, Nalea, and so on. I knew kind of who they were and what they were. I knew a lot about them before I started writing the book. They were people I wanted to go drinking with. That was first. Sland liked to kill a lot of people, so he needed a sense of humor about that. But I knew who they were. I knew a lot about the characters. And then when I started writing the story, it was like, well, what would these people be into? What would bring them together, and what would do it? And when I originally started to write the Brittle Riders, they were mutants interacting with humans, and and it was what hubris of man to doth play at the hand of God, blah. And I just thought that sucked, and it was so cliche and so trite. So I threw that out, and as Meredith knows, in the preamble of the Brittle Riders, I kill every man, woman, and child on the planet. They're all dead. And then I start the story. And I just got a review the other day from this young lady in England who finally read all 3 books of the Brittle Riders. And I thought, I love this review. She said, this book is what happens if Frankenstein's monsters win. And she meant that as a compliment. I mean, I got another review from some guy said, reading Bill McCormick, he's like, if David Brin came off a 3-day tequila bender and dropped acid, he would have written the Brittle Riders. That's a very accurate and positive review. But yeah, it's very, very twisted. But I'm very character oriented. Go Crave the Mist, which is coming out, was completely character oriented. Splice, I got hired by Watchdog Entertainment because I wanted to know about this character. I actually wrote them trying to figure out how this character fit in the line of comic books they already had out. And I was like, this guy's like in a panel here, a panel there. But at the end of the day, he's the one I want to know. I want to know him. And the guy wrote me back. He goes, well, if you want to know him, write him.
Wow.
And then, so I wrote him, and I wrote him into a comic book. And we were talking about this before you got here. I wrote him into a comic book script, and I sent 10 pages of a comic book script. And they said, nah, make it a movie instead, because we like this way so much more than you would like for a comic book. So I wrote him a movie, and then I circled back and I said, you need some intellectual property to support the movie. How about that comic book? And they said, nah, go ahead and write a novel. Here's something that. And so if we're talking, I'm a huge failure because I've never have sold a damn comic book. It's still sitting on my computer. But Splice is out now, and that's a near future sci-fi. But even that pitch was based on wanting to know the character. I want to know who I'm writing. I want to know these characters. I'll tell you a quick funny story. Kim and I met our pastor today, and I related this to her, so it's fresh in my mind. When I was writing the Brittle Riders, Sland, one of the characters in the book, was just comedy relief. He killed people and he made jokes. And that was his job. That's all I needed him to do to make this book work. And I ended up, and this is true, I ended up in a 2-day argument with that character in my head about his role in the book and how he was going to be acted. And I ended up going back and cutting and rewriting, I don't know, maybe a third of what was already written for the Brittle Riders to expand his role and do different things with him and make him a more richer, more dynamic character, which then I had it in my head how the book was going to end. And that turned out not to work, so I ended up having to write a second book. And then that turned out not to work, so I wrote a third book. I never planned for it to be a trilogy. I planned for it to be a novella. And so 312,000 words later, it was a book, and I was done with it. But it was all based on the characters. And I have a rule. I will never write a character into a book if I'm not going to give them a backstory, give them a reason to be there. If they can't be a real character, I won't write them in. You're never going to get the waitress who shows up in the bar or shows up at the guy's house and he has sex with him, makes him a sandwich and disappears. That's never going to happen in anything I write. If the character doesn't have an excuse to be there, isn't justified to be in the story, they just don't exist. It's never going to happen.
But in my world, the way you're doing your character development and stuff like that sounds to me like a planner more than a pantster. But I'm going to head over to Cindy because you are the planner here. Do you plan your characters? Do you or do you work on the plot first? How do you outline that? What is your process, or does it depend on the book?
It has depended very heavily on which book it was. Sometimes I come up with a scenario first and then write the characters to fit the scenario. Animal Eye, in its original incarnation, which started out with the bird character, was actually my parrot. And so she was encountering the world as a parrot. I didn't want an anthropomorphic bird. So so it was, her encountering this fantasy world and meeting up with an archer and traveling around with him and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And then when we turned it from fantasy to gamelit, the publisher and I were talking out the different game scenarios, and he said, "No, we really can't have a parrot. I don't think anyone would be interested in a parrot. You really need to make that a different kind of bird." So he said, "Okay, how about a raven?" "Okay, we'll do a raven." So as I was rewriting the story and turning Ava into a raven, he said, "You're still treating this like a small bird." I'm like, yeah. And so make it a crow. Okay, search replace, done. So now Ava is a crow. But so that one was started off with characters like Hurting the Wind and the sequel Into the Open. They both started out as the scenario I built the characters to fit. Had to move the setting. The original setting was late 1800s in Texas, but it started sounding too much like the Lone Ranger. So I kicked it forward about 80 years, and it made more sense there. So now it takes place in 1965. So it's still early enough that the alien technology is well advanced over the human technology without needing some kind of MacGuffin to disable the human tech. Mm-hmm. So that one started out as a concept. So it varies totally by which book it is. I had one that started out as a role-playing game. The ending doesn't have anything in common with the role-playing game. But the sequel started out as characters and then built the scenario around it.
Now, I love this question from David Atkins because he says, do your characters go into constant change as the story develops, or do you keep them constant? Which is better to do? From my own experience, now this is, again, trying to keep with pantster or planner. As a pantster, I've actually done this where I was writing and somewhere in the middle of my writing, the name changed or the hair color changed or the eyes changed. And I was like, oh shit, I got to go back there and fix it all, and the last thing I want to do is edit while I'm writing because, my theory, something that I've learned is that you just kind of vomit the words on the page and then you go back and edit later. And what is that quote? Somebody tell me, write drunk, edit sober. Who said that? Who said
Probably
that?
Probably all of us at one point or another.
Yeah.
I know somebody said that, but so I've done that. I mean, just a show of hands, who's actually done that, where you've kind of written the characters and all of a sudden it was like their name changed or something important changed. Gary, you're the only one without your hand up.
Well, I did get a review on Amazon the other day that was quite a great review, but the last sentence on the review said the only drawback I had was that the two characters, Alex and Abby, seemed to change polarity-wise. First, Alex was all out, going out and living for life and adventure, and Abby was crying and it was a total wreck. And then they seemed to have changed around. Well, there was a reason for that. It was the first book out of 3. And you'll find out in the second book why, but I guess the guy didn't understand. He knew there was another book coming, but there's a reason that Alex becomes the way he does, and it becomes very self-evident in the second book. Is that what we're talking about here? Those sort of changes?
Well, I mean, no, not necessarily, because that is we're seeing in the first book character development. I'm saying like in the first draft, when you're writing and all of a sudden, maybe Mary, it started off as the character Mary, and then by the end it is just like, no, she needs a better name. And maybe because you didn't write it down, you forgot where you referenced her as Mary, and all of a sudden she's like, I
didn't have that problem.
I've done that. I've done that.
Only in one book. I've only written one book, guys. I'm not, so give me a chance. I'm sure I'll get that down pat before I'm
very careful notes.
Yeah, the problem with careful notes is finding them later when you need them.
Not when they're on bright orange paper. That was a decision.
That's what I'm doing wrong.
You're not using yellow paper.
I need something I can see.
I never meant to write a series. I wrote a book and thought, okay, that's it, and then here come the second one. And I am now working on the 9th book in Hunter's Ridge. And my Bethan Hill series has 7 or 8. I think I just finished the 8th, maybe. Waiting for my publisher to catch up. And that doesn't happen when they go, oh, wait a minute, let's get something off what you usually publish. And so comes in the historical romance. Or should I say hysterical romance.
Now, are you ever frustrated that that maybe we're not, for the Pansters in the room, are you ever frustrated that you're not a little bit more organized? Because, I mean, honestly, Gary says that he's had this kind of roadmap for his characters. He kind of knows where it's going. So I wouldn't consider you a Pantster necessarily. With Donna, you've got your notes and stuff like that. I think, Bill, perhaps you are a true Pantster. I consider myself a frustrated one. Brian, I don't know, Brian, because you do a lot of editing. Is it a lot easier just to see other people's work and see where they went wrong as opposed to writing your own?
Yes, because I have this flaw in that I think I am flawless, and that's why I have an editor to remind me that I am not. In fact, I am as far from it as humanly possible and still be able to exist in this industry. But yeah, it's just that, you get too close to it. You hear all the time that sometimes we're too close to this, the work, and it's good to get fresh eyes in front of your manuscript. And I love working with tough editors. I really do. I handed in a short story one time. We got to page 5 before she had a paragraph where she didn't have a comment about what I was putting on there. She even called me 2 months after she accepted the revised manuscript and told me, we have one more change to make. You need to put an obscenity in there. I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, everyone else is, swearing, but you're the only one who's not. Pick something. And so I actually had to put one in, which usually it's the other way around. So, but no, I learned something. So, from other editors. So, I am just as glad not to constantly do my own. Except my wife does most of my editing, and her criticism is usually along the lines of, "Isn't chapter 33 supposed to make sense?"
And that kind of goes to what I was saying before is, like writing drunk and edit sober, just kind of putting things on paper. And the reason why I've done that is because when I'm writing and I'm in the zone, and maybe it doesn't make all sense, and maybe it doesn't have the complete story arc and everything, I'm just hammering out the words. Because previous to that, I found that when I was trying to self-edit, and maybe this is a totally different topic, but I think as we've kind of self-published ourselves. Gary, you're self-published, right? You didn't go to a publishing house, right?
I went through Outskirts.
Yeah. Okay. So when we're doing, I lost my train of thought, but damn it, this tiredness, and I'm like thinking about my drinks behind me.
See,
no, seriously, it's not 10
I got that part right.
There you go, everybody who's got their drinks. I've got a heavy shot of whiskey in mine. What the hell was I saying? Oh, editing to death. I found that I got into the really bad habit of editing my stuff to death, to the point where I just didn't want to look at it anymore. I couldn't stand it. And I think that's why I'm kind of a pantster. I want to get the ideas down first. Is that what you guys do? Do you do that? Is there something else that you do to try and get you through, just to the next phase of writing, whether it's just getting it down on paper, or do you edit as you go? Cindy?
Yes. I write everything out, but because I have a day job and some other weird stuff going on, I don't always get to write every day. Mm-hmm. So often what happens is when I sit down to write, I have to go back and reread the last couple of scenes I wrote so I can figure out where I was and where I'm headed, and check my notes and then launch into the next bit. While I'm doing that reread, if I see something that seems hinky, I'll make myself a note like, yeah, you've used 5 other names that all start with A. Maybe this one should be different. This guy's name's too close to that guy's name. Didn't this guy have red hair earlier? And so, and then I'll make wording changes, or I'll make myself a note in the columns like, need to check the rate of fire for cannon crews. And I don't necessarily stop and do that check then. I'll do that on my first round of actual revision. But yeah, I'll make myself notes and I'll do minor edits as I go.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Bill? Do you edit as you go, or do you just kind of no?
Nah. My favorite saying is, I always tell people, I just throw letters at a screen and pray to God they shape up like words. The thing of it is, though, and this is true, when I write, I write the whole story out. My first run through it is to make sure it all makes sense. I really am not hard editing it at that point. It's can they get from point A to point B? Can they just, if they're walking through Chicago, are they opening a door in New York? And if so, how the hell did that happen? But I try and make sure everything makes sense. And then once I go through a pass of it that way, I set it aside for a few days. Then I come back and I start editing it. I start looking at words, and and all the superfluous that's get killed, and all the varies get turned into something useful. They're not just very happy; they're ecstatic. I know how to use words. But when I'm first writing it, if you read my first drafts, you'd be like, "Dear God, why would anybody work with this idiot? He's horrible." Because I have a bad habit of using the word that, and I have a bad habit of using vary, and I also have a speech impediment when I'm talking. Sometimes I was like, so, and I'll write that into a sentence. So, so this person is mentally was challenged, and he's now your new lead character. Yay! But so I go through and I try and eliminate all that, and then when I eliminate all that. And this is true. At one point in the Brittle Writers, I told you, you weren't here yet, Meredith, but I told the story about having an argument with one of the characters. And after 2 days, the character won that argument. So I had to go back. And I was thinking about it after I said it the first time, and I went and made some changes. And I realized No, I actually gutted about 80,000 words before I got the changes. So I'd probably written about 120,000 words at that point, and I gutted 80 of them to get everything where I wanted it to be.
Doesn't that frustrate you, though?
No, not at all. Not at all. I actually find it exciting. It's like the story's coming more and more to life to me. I've done this. It happens to me every now and then, but it's like I'll kill 20,000 words. I don't care. That's one thing I'm really happy about though is everything we do these days is digital. So there's never going to be someone go, I found the intended version the author wanted. No, you didn't. You didn't find Dick. It's gone. It's gone forever. I mean, what was it? The Kill a Mockingbird. They found the new book. No, what you found was a first draft that got killed and it never should have seen the light of day. In any case, I never want that to happen to me. I never want one of my first drafts or early drafts to ever see the light of day. If I sign it and there's a contract and attached to it and it gets published, that's the book I meant to write. Trust me on that one, because like with Splice, I just did it. And this is a funny story. Every author on this panel is going to know this story. It's happened to them, I'm sure, at one point or another. But I wrote Splice. I had 5 beta readers on it. When we got done with the beta reads, I made a bunch of changes because they had these questions and different things they wanted added in. So I made all the changes. It was a much better book. I was very happy with it. I turned it over. We had 2 separate editors went through it to get to where they wanted it to be. They agreed. Everyone loved it. They put it out. Somebody bought it. The day after it went live, the next day, I get an email from one of the people who paid for the book and read it. Like, how did he mail that letter without a stamp? So, since it's only up digitally right now, we're doing a 4-week soft launch digitally. So since it's only up digitally right now, Uncle Billy goes back, types in a couple of quick sentences. Here's how he gets the stamp. Oh, he didn't know he had that problem, but he solved it now, and he's got a stamp, and I send it back to the publisher, and the publisher's like, okay, and they put it up online, and it's all fixed, and now he has a stamp. But honest to God, after all these people had read it, no one caught it. I didn't catch it. I wrote the damn thing, and I didn't catch it. That he had no money for a stamp. So how did this 10-year-old kid get a stamp to mail a letter?
Yeah.
It's
Gary,
a little Prince thing.
How about you?
Who, me?
Yeah, you. Do you edit as you go, or do you?
No, I write everything down and spelled it terribly, and let the spell check take care of spell checking.
Okay.
And then after I've written a few chapters, I will go back and start rereading. When I'm bored and I have nothing else to do, I'll read them. Take out all the ands and the verys and the thises, because this is just a word I seem to love. And if you go to any editing programs hate the word this. And it just spends so much time telling me, why do you need this? Is it here for a reason? And people will not understand what this is. So I've actually got to the point where I hardly ever use that word anymore. And it changed a lot about my writing. But I can sit there and edit my book 20 times. And somebody else looks at my book and they'll see things in there, misspelt words or grammatical errors immediately would jump out at them, because I think when I look at it, I know what it's meant to say and how it's meant to say it, and I'll jump over the mistake as I'm reading it. And that's why you need editors. And beta readers are one of the hardest things I'm having to find. Finding people to actually beta read my book and give me feedback. I've been asking people to give me feedback on the new book right now, because I want to make sure I'm getting the continuity, because I know what it's meant to say and how it's meant to tie into the first book, but are they getting that? And that's very important, because if they're not getting a tie-in and it's not continuous, the story's not continuous, and I'm missing a piece somewhere that they need to know about, it might be in here, but I might not have written it down in the book. And that's what I needed. So getting people to spend the time they want to read the book. They just want to take the book and read it and enjoy it and be happy and entertained. They don't want to do any work towards it. So it's very difficult.
And how about you, Donna? Sorry to stomp on you. Donna, how about you? Do you edit as you go, or do you?
I I write till I can't write anymore, and then I'll go back and read it. Yeah, but I am until my editor takes it out of my hands. I share them via Dropbox, which means I can still go in and reread and re-edit it. So until it disappears from there,
Mhm.
and he's commented quite a bit on that. Like just leave it alone. That's what I'm supposed to do now. But I'm like, well, I'm not. I don't have anything to do right now, so I'm reading through this book again. So until you totally take it away from me, I am editing, re-editing. Just I think I probably read every single story I've written 80 or 90 times, and
Mhm.
every time see something like, oh, that that needed changed. Oh, wait a minute, that's misspelled.
Brian,
Yeah.
what about you?
Well, if I'm writing my first draft out, I do tend to go back and edit because as I go, ideas keep occurring to me, especially as I'm solidifying the characters in my head. And so, I'm dancing all over the manuscript trying to fix everything now while I still remember it rather than write notes that I'll never find again. Now, with something I've been starting to do, especially with short stories, is dictating them into Word and then letting it, go from, voice to text. And it's reminded me how incredibly inarticulate I am because, all the that's and ands and all, the passive verbs. Oh, how I loathe passive verbs. They crop up all the time. And then I wind up like almost completely rewriting it anyway. So I'm still kind of in flux about that. But if I start out with the first draft, if I'm typing it out, then yeah, I'm going to be editing forward and backwards simply because I have the attention span of a mayfly, and I rather find out that I'm an idiot than send it to my editor and have them tell me I am. So
They still
So-
tell you you're an idiot.
Well, we've only got 8 more minutes.
I married my editor, so you're right.
Well, I want to just say that 1 hour is not enough for this panel because there's so much more that I want to talk about, like writer's block and how we get over that and stuff. So I want to do a real quick question. It's just like, like a fire question. So 1 or 2 words. Gary, you touched on it. What is the most overused word that you find that you have to edit out of your books? Cindy.
So then,
Bill.
That I am so guilty of using that they saw that it was nice instead of they saw it was nice. I just constantly am inserting that in there.
Yeah, I know. When is it right? When is it not? Gary, how about you?
This, that, and probably 20 other ones that you do not even realize you're using constantly until you go back and read it or somebody edits it for you.
Donna, how about you?
I'd say mine's not so much a word as a comma.
Okay.
I
enough.
evidently love commas.
Mm-hmm. Brian.
Was and that.
Mine is actually. I way overuse actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've only got a couple more minutes and we've got 6 people in the room. I want to go around the room. Please let them know. I'm going to put you on the big screen. Please let them know where they can find you. And, just on the follow-up, because it's been a crazy weekend. I haven't had a chance, but we're going to be doing kind of like an overview article. So we are going to share your links on our on an article through Geek Insider as well as Comic Book Advocates Network. Rising Tide Publications, we're going to be sharing that out on their Facebook page. And again, I really hope that you guys, this is an open invitation that I hope that we can do another panel. It'll be a little bit more leisurely, maybe clever title pending. I don't know. I don't want to volunteer. I don't want to volunteer Brian, but he's got a show called Clever Title Pending, and he does these interviews and panels, and it's wonderfully fun and a lot of information. And I want to apologize to the people who have been leaving comments. Unfortunately, it was just one of these things where we're just trying to get through this. This is an opportunity to get in contact with these wonderful writers, these authors, and we're going to do this again. at a more leisurely pace. So I'm going to go around the room. Cindy, let's put you up on the big screen. Where can we find you?
Hi-oh, you can find me at CKOEPP.com. That's my webpage. You'll find all the stuff about my sci-fi, fantasy, game lit, and teacher resources.
All right. Mr. Bill.
Does that show up? Yeah, there you go. BillMcSci-Fi.com. They're 24/7. It's got a little midget down there that answers all your questions for you. And you can buy stuff. So go there, buy stuff, because I've got a dining room full of stuff and I'm not doing cons. BillMcSci-Fi.com. Go have fun.
All right, Gary.
Hi, I'd like you to check out my book. It's on Amazon.com. If you go on to Amazon.com, there's an author page on there that will tell you how to reach me. I have Luna 3097 page on Facebook. Just type in Luna 3097 in your computer and I'll come up in a lot of different areas. Thank you.
Wonderful. Donna.
Yes, right now I'm available on lulu.com. Just type in Donna Carlene and you should be able to find the 6 books that are there. Excuse me. Or come see me at SilCon because I'll have all my books there. And then you'll get a personally signed copy.
Ooh, maybe a hug and a spank, too.
Definitely
I'm looking forward to both. That's what I'm going to get. I'm going to be there too. I'm Brian K. Morris, Rising Tide Publications, risingtide.pub, where you can get on my free monthly newsletter. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, all the cool kid spots. But mostly, I want you to find me on Amazon and Smashwords, because that's where you can get works like Volcana directly from me. Thank you very much, Meredith, for having me.
Oh, Brian, that was like the condensed version.
I'm trying to be good.
Well, we're actually jumping over to the next panel, which is what time is it? Oh my gosh! All right,
it is to self-publish or no with Carl Witzman, Teresa Dunn, Irene Smith, Meredith Loughran, and Brian K. Morris.
So a bunch of us are going to be here. I think if there's room, you are more than welcome. I'm going to drop the link to the next StreamYard to you guys in the private chat as we jump in. Brian, can you go over there and just make sure that there isn't anybody waiting in that room?
Yeah, I'll take care of that. Everyone have a great night. We'll see you later. And, oh, excuse me, butt beard.
That's beard.
What that means. There we go.
It's yesterday's word of the day, but I love it. I can't help it. So on that note, I want to thank you guys so much for being part of the panel. I don't want to call it a panel. It was kind of a roundtable discussion, and it's gone by way too fast because I think we have a lot of stuff that we can talk about. And again, I wanted to get to writer's block, and I'm so frustrated that we can't because that's one of the struggles that I have. Or not even writer's block, but writing yourself into a corner. That's the thing. So I want to thank you guys. I'm going to drop the link to the next StreamYard, and I hope that you can join us. We should have plenty of space. So on that note, thank you guys. Have a great evening. I hope that you're enjoying IndieVent. Make sure that you check out YouTube with the hashtag. Our panels and our live stream should be showing up for all the people who have been participating. It's about 40-something hours of content. So make sure that you save the playlist. Go through it, connect with people, share it out. If you can't support the Kickstarters, at least share it out with your friends. On that note, guys, thank you very much. We're ending.
Bye.
Thank you.